March 14, 1932, Rochester, New York. Heavy gray skies press down on East Avenue. Inside a 35,000-square-foot mansion, silence. The kind of silence that swallows sound. 1 p.m. A single shot shatters the sterile quiet. George Eastman, 77 years old, lies on his bedroom floor. A Luger automatic rests near his hand. Beneath his body, a carefully folded wet towel, placed there to catch the blood. Even in death, he controlled the mess. On his desk, a note. 7 words, handwritten in steady script. To my friends, my work is done. Why wait? The man who built Kodak, who turned photography from an elite ritual into a global democracy, had just fired himself from life. But this wasn't despair. This was engineering. If you enjoy deep investigations into Gilded Age architecture and the hidden psychology behind America's grandest mansions, please like and subscribe. This is forensic history, not glorification. The mansion around him told a different story than the one people saw. 37 rooms. Reinforced concrete throughout. Fireproof. Soundproof. A fortress designed not just to keep fire out, but to keep chaos out. Most people saw success. They saw the empire, the philanthropy, the mansion on the hill. But behind these walls lived a man who spent 50 years auditing every aspect of existence, only to discover that the one variable he couldn't control was his own body. The wet towel wasn't random. Nothing George Eastman did was random. To understand why, you have to go back, not to his triumphs, to the evidence. In the archives of the Rochester Savings Bank, buried among thousands of documents, sits a tattered notebook. Brown leather, edges worn smooth. The handwriting inside belongs to a 14-year-old boy. Page after page, entries in meticulous script. 5 cents for lunch, 3 cents for a newspaper, 2 cents saved. Every penny accounted for, every transaction justified. This wasn't a diary, this was a ledger. The boy who wrote it would grow up to build one of the most profitable monopolies in American history. He would die worth over $2 billion in today's money. But he never stopped keeping the ledger. The mansion on East Avenue wasn't a home. It was a bunker, a 35,000-square-foot machine designed to achieve perfect control over every sound, every temperature, every human interaction. It failed. Because on March 14, 1932, George Eastman performed his final calculation. He reviewed his assets, assessed his liabilities, and determined that his biological infrastructure had become obsolete. So he liquidated it. This is the story of a man who engineered reality itself, only to discover that engineering has limits. It's the story of how genius and pathology built the same mansion. And it's the story of what happens when you spend a lifetime building walls against chaos, only to realize that chaos was inside you all along. But where does obsession like this begin? What creates a man who treats his own death as a business transaction? The answer is in that ledger. The 5-cent lunches. The desperate arithmetic of a boy who learned too early that poverty isn't just discomfort, it's erasure. Rochester, New York, 1868. George Eastman is 14 years old. His father has been dead for 2 years. The cause of death: brain disorder. Slow, expensive, humiliating. It consumed the family's savings first, then their dignity. Now, his mother Maria takes in boarders. She cooks, she cleans, she washes other people's clothes in a basement tub, her hands red and cracked from lye soap. George watches her bent over that tub, scrubbing shirts for men who will never know her name, men who earn in a week what would take her a month. Something hardens inside him, not anger, calculation. He makes a vow, silent, absolute. Poverty will never touch him again, not him, not his mother, never. But vows need systems, so the boy creates one. The ledger. Every morning before school, he opens the notebook, records his spending from the previous day, projects his needs for the week, calculates the gap between what he has and what he needs. At 14, he's already running audits. 5 cents for lunch. Can he make it 4? Can he skip lunch twice a week and bank the savings? He gets a job as an office clerk. 75 cents a day, roughly $20 in modern terms. Every Friday, he brings the money home to his mother. She cries the first time. He doesn't understand why. To him, it's simply correction. Poverty is a math problem. The solution is to out-calculate it. But poverty leaves marks that arithmetic can't erase. Years later, when he builds his mansion, he will specify reinforced concrete for every wall. Not wood. Wood burns. Fire is the weapon poverty uses to erase everything you've built in a single night. He watched it happen to neighbors, families who lost everything when a candle tipped, when a stove flared, when winter demanded heat, and old wood answered with flame. Fire doesn't care about your ledger. It doesn't negotiate. So when George Eastman builds, he builds with concrete. Heavy, permanent, fireproof. The walls of his mansion will be 12 inches thick, not for beauty, for survival. But that's 20 years away. Right now, he's a teenage clerk, practicing the discipline that will define his life. Control the variables. Eliminate the risks. Build systems that can't betray you. His mother doesn't know it yet, but she's watching the birth of a philosophy. Every hour she spends at that washtub is programming her son's operating system. Chaos is the enemy. Order is survival. Control is love. By the time he's 20, George Eastman has saved enough to buy his mother a small house. Nothing grand, just 4 rooms and a kitchen. But it's hers, she owns it. No landlord, no boarders. For the first time since his father died, she sleeps in a bed that belongs to her. George stands in the doorway watching her sleep. He doesn't smile. He's already calculating the next target. Because the house didn't fix the fear, it just proved the system worked. If you can control your spending, you can control your shelter. If you can control your shelter, you can control your survival. If you can control your survival, maybe you can control the chaos that killed your father and bent your mother over a washtub. The ledger grows thicker. The entries multiply. Every transaction recorded. Every penny justified. His co-workers think he's strange. Why does he eat bread and water for lunch when he could afford meat? They don't understand. He's not saving money. He's building a fortress against randomness. And randomness is about to make him an offer. In 1877, a colleague shows George a photograph. Nothing special. A family portrait. But George asks the question that will change everything. How long did that take to develop? 3 hours, the colleague says. In a darkroom, with chemicals mixed to exact specifications. Miss one step, ruin the plate. George Eastman looks at the photograph. He sees the chaos, the complexity, the 1,000 ways it can fail. And he thinks, this is a problem I can solve. Photography in 1877 is not an art, it's a punishment. The wet collodion process requires a portable darkroom, glass plates coated with toxic chemicals, and the patience of a monk. Exposure times stretch for minutes. Subjects must remain frozen, clamped into neck braces to prevent blur. One mistake ruins everything. The chemistry is unforgiving. This is exactly the kind of chaos George Eastman cannot tolerate. So he doesn't take up photography as a hobby, he takes it up as a problem to eliminate. For 3 years, he works a full day at the bank, then returns home to his mother's kitchen. He converts it into a laboratory, mixing gelatin emulsions, testing silver bromide suspensions, coating plates, failing, adjusting, failing again. His mother watches him work until 3 in the morning, every morning, for months. She asks him once why he doesn't sleep. He looks at her like the answer is obvious. Because the formula isn't finished yet. The breakthrough comes in 1880, a dry plate that can be manufactured in advance, stored for months, and developed at the photographer's convenience. It's not magic, it's elimination of variables. Eastman patents it immediately. Then he does something smarter. He builds a factory. Not to sell plates to photographers, to manufacture them at scale so cheaply that no one can compete. Within 2 years, the Eastman Dry Plate Company is shipping products across America. Photography is still complex, still expensive, but Eastman has removed one layer of chaos. It's not enough. In 1884, he invents flexible film on paper rolls. Suddenly, photographers don't need to carry boxes of glass plates. They can load a roll, take multiple pictures, and develop later. But Eastman is still dissatisfied. Photography is still too complicated, too exclusive. The problem isn't the film, it's the photographer. So in 1888, he removes the photographer entirely. He invents a camera so simple a child can use it. A wooden box, 1 button, 100 exposures. The Kodak. He writes the advertising himself. 6 words that will define a century. You press the button, we do the rest. Translation: you don't need to understand chemistry. You don't need to master technique. You don't need to control anything. Because George Eastman will control it for you. The customer takes pictures, sends the entire camera to Rochester. Eastman's factory develops the film, prints the photographs, reloads the camera, and ships it back. The consumer gets memories. Eastman gets control. It's beautiful, it's totalizing. It's exactly what his pathology was designed to create. A system where complexity is hidden, where chaos is contained, where the customer never has to face the terrifying randomness of chemistry and light. The price? $100, roughly $3,000 in today's money. For that, you get the camera and processing for the first roll. Within a year, Eastman is selling thousands of units. Within 5 years, Kodak is a household name. Photography has been democratized. Not because Eastman believed in democracy, because he believed in control at scale. If he could build a system perfect enough, foolproof enough, he could sell control to millions. And millions bought it. By 1892, the Eastman Kodak Company is valued at several $1 million, over $100 million in modern terms. George Eastman is 38 years old, wealthy beyond imagination, successful beyond calculation. His mother is alive to see it. She lives in a real house now, with servants, with comfort. The poverty is gone, the chaos is managed, the system works. But the boy who kept the ledger never stopped counting, because he learned something in that kitchen laboratory, something darker than any photograph. Control is not a destination, it's an appetite, and appetites grow. Success brought money, money brought visibility, and visibility brought vulnerability. In 1900, Eastman will face the crisis that transforms him from inventor to monopolist, a crisis that will force him to choose between integrity and survival. He will choose survival, but the choice will cost him something he didn't know he could lose. 1900, summer. Telegrams flood the Kodak offices. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. The message is the same. The photographic plates are defective, streaked, fogged, unusable. Eastman's new emulsion formula has failed. Not in the laboratory, in the field, in the hands of thousands of customers who trusted him. His partners convene an emergency meeting. The solution is obvious. Issue an apology, offer discounts on future orders, move forward. Standard business practice. Acknowledge the defect, minimize the damage, survive. George Eastman listens to their proposal. Then he says 4 words that will define his empire. We recall everything. Full refund. His partners think he's had a breakdown. The cost will be catastrophic. It could bankrupt the company. Eastman doesn't argue. He opens his ledger, runs the numbers. If they issue partial refunds, they save money short term, but they lose something more valuable, trust. And trust is the foundation of a monopoly. Within a week, Kodak recalls every defective plate, every camera, every roll of film. No questions asked. Full purchase price returned. The cost is staggering. Over $100,000, nearly $3 million in today's money. But Eastman isn't buying forgiveness. He's buying territory. Because the recall does something unprecedented. It proves that Kodak is different, that when you buy from Kodak, you're not just buying film, you're buying certainty. The company doesn't just survive, it explodes. Within 5 years, Kodak controls 90% of the American film market. Within 10 years, it's a global empire. But Eastman doesn't stop at market dominance. He wants something pure, absolute control. He begins acquiring patents. Not just his own, everyone's, every innovation in photography he buys or buries. Competitors emerge. He crushes them. Not with better products, with lawsuits, patent infringement cases that drag for years, bleeding smaller companies dry. By 1915, Kodak is not a company. It's a fortress, an economic fortress with walls as thick as the concrete mansion Eastman is planning to build. The mansion will come later. First, he needs the resources to build something fireproof. And he's acquiring them. Ruthlessly, systematically. The revenue pours in. Millions annually. Tens of millions by the 1920s. In today's terms, Eastman is generating over $500 million in annual revenue at the company's peak. He doesn't spend it on yachts or estates abroad. He invests it in control. More patents. More factories. More vertical integration. Kodak will manufacture its own cameras, its own film, its own chemicals, its own paper. Nothing outsourced. Nothing vulnerable to outside suppliers. The same philosophy that made him keep a ledger at 14 is now building an empire. Eliminate variables, control the supply chain, remove randomness. But empires need headquarters. By 1902, Eastman is 48 years old, wealthy enough to build anything. The question is, what does a man who has spent 30 years eliminating chaos build for himself? Not a home, a monument to control. He purchases land on East Avenue, Rochester's most prestigious address. 5 acres. Room enough for gardens, for privacy, for distance from the city's disorder. And he begins to plan. Not with architects first, with engineers. Because George Eastman doesn't want beauty. He wants systems. He wants a structure that cannot burn, cannot fail, cannot betray him the way poverty betrayed his mother. He wants a fortress made of stone and steel and concrete, a place where every variable is controlled, every sound managed, every human interaction optimized. The mansion will take years to build, but Eastman has time and money and an obsession that has been growing since he was 14 years old. Control isn't just business strategy anymore, it's architecture. Construction begins in 1902. 50 workers report to the site every morning. They're not building a home, they're building a machine. A machine designed to house one man and eliminate every form of chaos that traumatized a boy who once ate 5-cent lunches and watched his mother scrub other people's shirts. But what does that machine actually look like? What happens when you translate pathology into blueprints? The specifications arrive at the construction site in December 1902. Walls, 12-inch reinforced concrete, every exterior surface, every interior partition. Not brick, not wood, concrete poured around steel rebar grids. The same material used for factory floors and fireproof vaults. The construction foreman questions it. Concrete makes the structure heavy, expensive, cold. Eastman's response is immediate. Fire killed my neighbors. Fire will not kill me. But the concrete serves another purpose he doesn't articulate. Soundproofing. 12-inch concrete walls don't just resist flame. They absorb sound, voices, footsteps, the human noise that signals disorder. The mansion will eventually contain 37 rooms across 50,000 square feet, but Eastman doesn't want to hear any of it unless he chooses to. The floor plan reveals something stranger than mere scale. 2 circulation systems, 2 sets of hallways, 2 entirely separate paths through the building. The main corridors are grand, 15 feet wide, mahogany paneling, imported marble floors. But hidden behind the walls, a second network, narrow passages, plain concrete, servant corridors that run parallel to every major room. The blueprints show the logic. A servant can move from the kitchen to any bedroom, any sitting room, any bath, without ever entering Eastman's sightline. They are architecturally invisible, not because Eastman hates his staff, because he cannot tolerate the randomness of human presence. If a maid appears unexpectedly in a hallway, that's chaos, an uncontrolled variable. But if servants move through hidden arteries, emerge only when summoned, vanish back into the walls when dismissed, that's a system. The kitchen reveals the same philosophy. Industrial scale, commercial ovens, walk-in refrigerators, sinks large enough to process banquet-level food volume. But here's what the blueprints don't show, what only the specifications reveal. A central vacuum system. Pipes built into the walls throughout the entire mansion, not portable units, fixed infrastructure. Servants don't carry vacuum cleaners from room to room. They plug hoses into wall outlets. The suction mechanism is centralized in the basement. Industrial grade. Quiet. No visible cleaning equipment. No clatter of machines. Dirt is removed the way Eastman removes all problems. Systematically, invisibly, through engineered infrastructure. Then there's the organ. Not a small parlor instrument. An Aeolian pipe organ. The largest ever installed in a private American residence. Cost? $60,000 in 1905, over $2 million in today's money. It occupies 3 full stories of the mansion. The pipes run from the basement to the 3rd floor, 950 individual pipes, some taller than a man. Why would a man obsessed with silence install the loudest possible instrument? Because the organ doesn't create chaos, it controls sound. When George Eastman plays, the music fills every room. It drowns out conversation. It eliminates the unpredictable murmur of human voices. He performs alone, no audience. He schedules organ sessions the way other men schedule board meetings. 7 a.m. Before the household staff begins their routines, before randomness infiltrates his controlled environment, the sound is overwhelming, majestic, totalizing. And when it stops, the silence that follows is absolute. The telephone system is even more revealing. Most wealthy homes in 1905 have 1 phone, perhaps 2. Eastman installs 22 extensions in his bedroom, in his study, in the conservatory, in the basement mechanical rooms. Not for convenience, for elimination of movement. If he needs to speak to his head gardener, he doesn't walk outside. He picks up the extension. The gardener receives the call in the greenhouse. Communication without proximity. Control without contact. But the most psychologically dense detail is in the bedroom. The master suite occupies the entire 2nd floor east wing. Massive, private, accessible by a single staircase that can be closed off. The bed itself is custom, built to Eastman's specifications. Firm mattress. No give. The frame is steel, not wood, bolted to the floor. Even sleep is engineered. But next to the bed, a detail that appears in the construction photographs. A small table. On it, a telephone extension. And beneath the table, built into the floor, a fireproof safe. In the safe, according to household inventories from later years, Eastman keeps his mother's letters, his father's death certificate, his childhood ledgers, the documents that prove where he came from, the evidence that poverty once touched him. He keeps them in a fireproof container, in a fireproof room, in a fireproof mansion. Because the past can burn, and if the past burns, so does the meaning of everything he built. The mansion is completed in 1905. Total cost, $400,000, roughly $15 million in today's money. It is not beautiful, it is correct. Every room serves a function. Every system eliminates a variable. Every design choice reflects a worldview forged in a kitchen where a 14-year-old boy watched his mother's hands crack from lye soap. This is not architecture, this is therapy rendered in concrete. And it will trap him more completely than poverty ever did. But a machine this complex doesn't run itself. It needs operators, human components. By 1906, the mansion employs a permanent staff of 13. By 1915, that number grows to 19. They live in the building, they maintain the systems, and they operate according to rules that would make a factory foreman proud. Because George Eastman didn't just engineer his house, he engineered the people inside it. 6 a.m. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Ellen Dryden, unlocks the servant corridor access doors. The day begins. By 6:15, the kitchen staff has lit the ovens. By 6:30, the groundskeepers have inspected the conservatory plants. By 6:45, the housemaids have emptied the previous day's ashes from 15 fireplaces. George Eastman doesn't see any of this. He's designed the schedule so he doesn't have to. The rules are posted in the basement staff room, typewritten, updated quarterly. Rule 7. Staff will not use the main staircases between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. unless summoned. Rule 14. Conversations in hallways are prohibited. Communication between staff will occur in designated areas only. Rule 21. All mechanical systems must operate silently. Equipment producing audible noise will be replaced. These aren't suggestions. They're engineering specifications for human behavior. Mrs. Dryden earns $35 per month, roughly $1,000 in today's money. She's been with the household for 8 years. She knows the systems better than Eastman does. She manages a staff that includes 2 ladies' maids, 2 housemaids, 1 kitchen maid, 1 scullery maid, 2 laundresses, 1 cook, 1 assistant cook, 3 groundskeepers, 2 chauffeurs, 1 head butler, 1 assistant butler. 19 people living in the mansion or in the carriage house, operating the infrastructure that keeps one man comfortable. The wages tell a story the blueprints can't. Head butler, $45 per month, $1,300 in modern terms. Housemaids, $18 per month, $500 today. Scullery maid, $12 per month, $350 today. Total monthly payroll, approximately $600, $18,000 in modern money. Now consider what Eastman spends on the mansion's mechanical systems. The Aeolian organ requires a dedicated maintenance contract, $150 annually, $4,500 today, just to keep it tuned. The central vacuum system needs specialized repair, service contract, $300 annually, $9,000 today. The telephone system, 22 extensions, each requiring installation, maintenance, operator fees. Annual cost, approximately $500, $15,000 today. The contrast is forensic. Eastman will spend more maintaining his organ in 1 year than he pays his scullery maid in 3. He will spend more on telephone infrastructure than he pays all 4 housemaids combined. This isn't cruelty, it's priority architecture. Mechanical systems don't have bad days. They don't get sick. They don't have opinions. They are controllable in a way humans never can be. But humans are cheaper than machinery. So Eastman creates a hybrid, human components operating under mechanical discipline. The staff schedule is posted monthly. Shifts rotate with factory precision. Housemaids work 16-hour days, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., 1 day off per month. Groundskeepers work 12-hour days, 7 days a week during growing season. The butler is on call at all hours. His bedroom is adjacent to the kitchen. He sleeps with one ear listening for the call bell system, because Eastman has installed electric call bells in every room, 37 buttons, each connected to an indicator board in the butler's pantry. He doesn't shout for service. He presses a button. The mechanical system summons the human component. Silent, efficient, controlled. But here's what the household ledgers reveal: the detail that exposes the pathology most completely. In 1912, Eastman upgrades the organ. He adds pneumatic player mechanisms. Cost $18,000, over $500,000 in today's money. The same year, he denies a request from Mrs. Dryden for salary increases for the housemaids. His reasoning, documented in a letter to his estate manager: current compensation is consistent with market rates. No adjustment warranted. The housemaids continue earning $18 per month, $500 in modern terms. Eastman spends 1,000 times their annual salary to install a machine that plays music automatically, so he doesn't have to. This is the arithmetic of control. Humans are necessary, but they are liabilities. They require management. They introduce variables. Machinery is expensive, but it is reliable. It operates according to specifications. So when given the choice, Eastman invests in machinery. The invisible hands that maintain his mansion are kept invisible not through cruelty, but through systems engineering. The servant corridors ensure he never sees them unless he chooses. The schedules ensure their labor happens outside his awareness. The wages ensure they remain dependent, stable, controllable. It's the same philosophy he applied to Kodak. Remove complexity from the user experience. Hide the mechanisms. Deliver results without revealing the machinery. Except now the users are him, and the machinery is human. Remember the ledger. The 5-cent lunches. The boy who counted every penny because poverty had taught him that resources are finite and chaos is one mistake away. That boy grew up, got rich, built an empire, but he never stopped being afraid. The mansion isn't protection from poverty. It's a monument to the terror poverty left behind. And the staff, the invisible hands, they're not servants in the traditional sense. They're components in a defensive system, human infrastructure, designed to maintain the illusion that chaos can be engineered out of existence. It can't. But George Eastman will spend 30 years trying, and he will spend millions of dollars building systems to prove it, right up until the moment his body betrays him, and the one system he can't control finally fails. But that failure is still 2 decades away. For now, in 1915, the mansion operates perfectly. The servants move through their corridors. The organ plays. The vacuum system hums in the basement. Everything is under control, except the one variable he never calculated. Maria Eastman, George's mother, is 76 years old. She lives in a suite on the 1st floor. Her son visits her every evening at 6 p.m. Exactly. She is the only chaos he allows, the only unpredictable element in his engineered world. Because she earned it. Because she bent over that washtub so he could build this fortress. But in 1907, that variable is about to change. And when it does, George Eastman will discover that all the concrete in the world can't stop grief. May 1907. Early morning. George Eastman stands in his mother's suite. The doctors have left. The nurses have withdrawn to the hallway. Maria Eastman is 76 years old. She has been declining for months. Weakness. Confusion. The slow dissolution of the woman who once scrubbed floors for pennies. He has hired the best physicians money can buy, specialists from New York, from Boston. He has converted an entire wing of the mansion into a medical facility. But medicine has limits. Biology has its own mathematics. At 6:47 a.m., her breathing stops. George Eastman watches the stillness. He doesn't cry. He doesn't call for help. He stands there for 7 minutes. Precisely 7 minutes, according to the nurse who later testified to the household manager. Then he reaches over and closes her eyes, adjusts the blanket, smooths it flat. He walks out of the room, closes the door behind him. In the hallway, the staff waits. They expect grief, breakdown, some human expression of loss. Instead, he issues instructions. Contact the funeral director. Notify family members. Cancel my appointments for the week. Resume normal household operations tomorrow. His voice is steady, professional, the same tone he uses to discuss quarterly earnings. Then he goes to his study, locks the door. For 3 days, he doesn't emerge, except for the funeral. The service is efficient, Presbyterian. No dramatics, no lengthy eulogies. Burial at Riverside Cemetery next to her husband. George Eastman delivers no speech. He stands at the graveside in a black suit, hands clasped behind his back, face expressionless. When the burial concludes, he returns to the mansion, enters his study, locks the door again. The staff whispers they know something has broken. But broken things in George Eastman don't show cracks. They just operate differently. 6 weeks after the funeral, he fires 3 long-term employees. No cause given. No severance beyond legal minimums. The household manager questions it. These are loyal workers, decades of service. Eastman's response is immediate. Inefficiencies have been identified. Corrections have been applied. It's not true. The employees were competent, but Eastman needs to exercise control over something, anything, because the one variable he couldn't control has been permanently removed. His mother was the axis, the reason for the ledger, the reason for the mansion, the reason he clawed his way out of poverty and built an empire. She was supposed to see it, to live in it, to be safe in the fireproof fortress he built specifically so she would never again scrub another person's laundry. But she's gone, and the fortress is just concrete now. The engineering problem that defined his life has been solved. She died comfortable, protected, warm. But solving the problem didn't satisfy it. It eliminated the meaning. Without Maria, the mansion is a 50,000 square foot monument to a woman who will never walk its halls again. He keeps her suite exactly as it was. Nothing is moved. Nothing is changed. The staff is forbidden to enter except for weekly dusting. For the next 25 years, until his own death, that suite will remain frozen, a museum to the only chaos he ever tolerated. But the rest of him hardens. In business, he becomes more ruthless. Kodak's legal department begins filing patent lawsuits at unprecedented rates. Competitors are crushed with surgical efficiency. Eastman begins attending fewer social functions. The mansion's grand parties become less frequent. He stops hosting dinners entirely by 1910. The organ plays more often. Long sessions. 7 a.m. Sometimes 10 p.m. The music fills the empty rooms. But it doesn't fill the vacuum. His friends notice the change. Letters from the period describe him as colder, more distant, obsessively focused on work. He doesn't deny it. Work is calculable, grief is not. So he doubles down on what he can control: more factories, more patents, more systems. Kodak's revenue explodes. By 1910, the company is generating over $20 million annually, roughly $600 million in today's terms. George Eastman is worth over $100 million in modern equivalent. But he eats dinner alone, in a mansion built for 2. The wet towel, the one he will place on his chest 25 years later. That's not random either. His mother used wet towels to cool fevers, to soothe burns from the laundry soap. The last thing George Eastman will do before he pulls the trigger is recreate a gesture of care from the only person who ever cared for him without calculation. But that's 2 decades away. For now, in 1907, he's learning what every control engineer eventually learns. Some variables can't be eliminated. They can only be outlived. Grief without outlet becomes pressure, and pressure seeks release. For most men, that release comes through family, children, grandchildren, the biological continuation that softens the edge of mortality. George Eastman will never marry, will never have children. The reasons are complex, buried in psychology we can only trace through his actions. Instead, he will channel that pressure into something else, something that looks like generosity but operates like engineering. He will attempt to buy immortality. 1912, George Eastman writes a check for $2.5 million, roughly $75 million today. The recipient, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The condition: his name must not appear on any building. No public announcement. Total anonymity. MIT accepts. They call him Mr. Smith in all correspondence. This is not modesty. This is investment strategy. Eastman has calculated that institutions outlive individuals. Buildings crumble. Companies fail. But universities, hospitals, research centers, these can persist for centuries. If he embeds his wealth deep enough into the infrastructure of knowledge itself, his influence becomes permanent. Anonymous, yes, but permanent. Over the next 2 decades, he will give away over $100 million in today's equivalent, the majority of his fortune, a philanthropic campaign executed with the same precision he applied to building Kodak. But look at the targets. Look at the pattern. The University of Rochester receives $30 million in modern terms. He funds the construction of the Eastman School of Music, not because he loves music for its own sake, but because music is systems, notation, theory, reproducible. He endows the Eastman Dental Dispensary, free dental care for Rochester's poor children. Why dentistry? Because dental disease is a solvable problem. Systematic intervention, measurable results. He funds clinics across Europe, London, Paris, Brussels, Stockholm. Each one bears no trace of his name. Each one operates according to protocols he personally reviews. This is philanthropy as engineering. Solve problems at scale. Build infrastructure that outlasts the builder. His friends ask why he doesn't marry, why he doesn't produce heirs to inherit the empire. He deflects, jokes about being married to Kodak. But the real reason is simpler and darker. Children are uncontrollable variables. They develop their own personalities, make their own choices, squander fortunes, rebel against their fathers. Eastman watched it happen to other industrial dynasties. The Vanderbilt children fighting over estates, the Rockefeller sons rejecting their father's vision. Biological legacy is chaos. Institutional legacy is engineered. So he chooses institutions. He establishes the Hampton Institute and Tuskegee Institute endowments, funding black education in the South, not out of racial progressivism, though that's how it's later portrayed, out of optimization. He believes education produces productive workers. Productive workers generate economic stability. Economic stability benefits his factories. His strategic philanthropy, compassion through calculation. By 1920, George Eastman's systematic giving has made him one of the most influential philanthropists in America. His name, when it finally becomes public after years of Mr. Smith donations, is synonymous with enlightened capitalism. Newspapers praise him. Universities dedicate ceremonies to him. The public sees generosity. But read his letters. Read the internal memos preserved in the Eastman archives. Every donation is analyzed. Cost-benefit ratios, Impact projections. 5-year strategic plans. In a 1919 letter to the University of Rochester, he writes, "I expect a return on this investment in the form of measurable educational outcomes and regional economic development." Not charity. Investment. He's not buying goodwill. He's buying infrastructure that will continue optimizing society long after his death. It's the same philosophy as the dry plate. Remove complexity. Build systems that work without constant human intervention. Except now, instead of simplifying photography, he's simplifying social progress. And it works. The institutions he funds thrive. The Eastman School of Music becomes world-renowned. The dental clinics treat hundreds of thousands. MIT's research programs accelerate. His wealth is converting into permanence. But there's a problem he didn't calculate. Institutions don't love you back. Universities name buildings after donors. But the buildings don't care who funded them. Patients receive treatment from clinics, but they don't remember the man who made it possible. Immortality through institutions is cold, abstract, impersonal. It's permanent, yes, but it's empty. By 1924, George Eastman is 70 years old. He has given away most of his fortune. His name is carved into marble at universities across 2 continents. He returns every evening to a mansion that cost $15 million in modern terms, to a bedroom adjacent to his dead mother's frozen suite. The organ still plays. The servants still maintain their schedules. The systems still function. But the mansion is silent, in the way only enormous spaces can be silent. He built a fortress against chaos, filled it with machinery that eliminated randomness, gave away a fortune to ensure his influence would outlast his body. But he can't engineer meaning, he can't systematize purpose. And in 1928, his body will begin delivering a message his engineering mind cannot override. The biological infrastructure is failing, and no amount of money, no endowment, no institutional permanence can repair it. The first symptom appears in late 1928. A numbness in his legs, brief, easily dismissed. Then pain, sharp, radiating down his spine. Eastman consults specialists. They run tests. The diagnosis arrives in technical language, but the meaning is simple. His spine is compressing. Nerves are dying. The machinery of his own body is breaking down in ways that cannot be fixed. For a man who spent 70 years eliminating variables, this is the ultimate betrayal. The one system he cannot control is housed inside his own skin. 1929. Dr. Audley Stewart examines the X-rays for the 3rd time. Spinal stenosis. Degenerative, progressive, incurable. The vertebrae in Eastman's lower spine are narrowing. Bone is pressing against nerve tissue. The pain will increase. Mobility will decrease. Eventually, he will lose the ability to walk. Eastman sits across the desk, 75 years old, still dressed in a 3-piece suit at 8 a.m., still maintaining perfect posture despite the agony in his back. He asks Dr. Stewart for the prognosis, not in emotional terms, in mechanical ones. What is the timeline for complete loss of function? Dr. Stewart hesitates, then answers honestly. 18 months to 3 years. You'll need a wheelchair within a year, possibly sooner. Eastman nods, thanks him, stands to leave. The pain when he stands is electric, white-hot signals firing from his spine down both legs. He doesn't let it show on his face. In the car back to East Avenue, he performs calculations. A wheelchair means dependence. Dependence means nurses. Constant human presence. Loss of privacy. Loss of control over his own body's position in space. It means becoming the variable, the unpredictable element, the chaos. This is unacceptable. By 1930, the progression matches Dr. Stewart's prediction. Eastman can no longer climb stairs without assistance. The mansion he built, The fireproof fortress with its grand staircases has become an obstacle course. He installs an elevator. Industrial grade. The same model used in Kodak factories. Even his mobility solutions are drawn from manufacturing infrastructure. But the elevator doesn't solve the real problem. The problem is biological entropy, the systematic failure of organic machinery. His hands shake in the morning. Not from palsy, from the pain signals disrupting motor control. He can no longer play the organ. His feet can't operate the pedals. His fingers miss keys. The music that once filled the mansion's silence stops. Now there's only the silence. By 1931, he requires a cane, then 2 canes, then a walker. Each adaptive device is a concession. Each concession is a defeat. His friends visit less frequently, not because they've abandoned him, because he no longer invites them. He doesn't want them to see what he's becoming. A man who built an empire on the promise, "You press the button, we do the rest," is discovering that his own body has become a machine with no service technician. Dr. Stewart prescribes pain medication, morphine derivatives. They help, but they cloud his thinking. Eastman refuses them except at night. He will not sacrifice mental clarity for physical comfort. Clarity is the last variable he still controls. In late 1931, he begins asking Dr. Stewart different questions. Not about treatment, about anatomy. Where exactly is the heart located in the chest cavity? What angle would ensure penetration of the left ventricle? How much pressure does a Luger automatic generate? Dr. Stewart understands what's happening. He's been a physician long enough to recognize when a patient is conducting research for a final project. He tries to deflect, offers experimental treatments, recommends specialists in New York, in Europe. Eastman listens politely, then continues his anatomical questioning. On January 15, 1932, Dr. Stewart sits with Eastman in the study. He draws a diagram, a cross-section of the human chest. He marks the heart's position. He doesn't want to do this, but he knows Eastman well enough to understand. The man will find the information elsewhere if necessary. Better to ensure accuracy than to let him experiment. Eastman studies the diagram, asks clarifying questions about rib placement, about bone density, about the optimal entry angle to avoid deflection. He's treating his own death as an engineering problem, because that's what it is. His body has become a defective product. The organic infrastructure can no longer maintain the specifications required for his standard of living. In the ledger he still keeps, the one he started at 14, he makes a final entry. The date, March 13, 1932. The notation, final project, specifications confirmed, execution scheduled. Then a list. Complete will codicil. Verify all institutional endowments, settle outstanding accounts, compose notification, acquire tool, test angle, execute. It reads like a product launch checklist. Because to George Eastman, death is simply the last product he'll ever manufacture. And he will manufacture it to exact specifications. On the morning of March 14th, he summons his lawyers. The codicil is signed. The final distribution of assets is confirmed. Kodak will continue without him. The institutions he funded will persist. The mansion will become a museum. All variables accounted for. All systems ready for autonomous operation. At 12:45 p.m., he dismisses everyone from his bedroom. He tells them he wants to rest, to write a note. They leave, close the door. George Eastman sits on his bed. The pain in his spine is constant now, a baseline of suffering that medication can no longer touch without destroying his consciousness. He has lived 77 years, built an empire, revolutionized human memory itself. But he cannot control the degradation of his own nervous system. So he will do what he always did when faced with a problem that couldn't be optimized. He will eliminate it. The wet towel is already prepared, folded precisely, dampened with cold water. The Luger is in the desk drawer, loaded, safety off. The note is written, 7 words, the minimum necessary for clarity. He places the towel on his chest, over his heart, exactly where Dr. Stewart's diagram indicated. He lifts the pistol, and for the first time in 77 years, George Eastman stops calculating. He simply executes. 1 p.m., the shot echoes through 12-inch concrete walls. Downstairs, the servants freeze. They know that sound. They know what it means. Dr. Stewart runs up the stairs, opens the door. The scene is exactly as Eastman engineered it. Clean, efficient, controlled to the last second. But what happens next, he couldn't control. Because the mansion he built to house his victory over chaos is about to become something he never intended. A public monument, a museum, a place where millions will walk through his private spaces, studying the man who spent a lifetime building walls against the world. The fortress designed for solitude will become a destination for crowds. And that irony, that final loss of control, is perhaps the only thing George Eastman didn't calculate. Dr. Stewart stands in the doorway. His hands are shaking. On the bedside table, next to the note, sits the codicil Eastman signed 90 minutes ago. The document is legal perfection. Every asset accounted for, every institution funded, every loose end tied. The University of Rochester receives the mansion itself to be converted into a museum and presidential residence. The Eastman School of Music receives additional endowment of $10 million in modern terms. The Rochester Dental Dispensary receives operational funding in perpetuity. His employees receive bonuses calculated precisely according to years of service. The codicil was the final engineering specification, a complete system transfer, like handing over a factory to new management after the original architect retires. Except Eastman didn't retire. He fired himself. Dr. Stewart picks up the note, 7 words in firm handwriting. To my friends, my work is done. Why wait? Not, I can't bear the pain. Not, forgive me. Not, I'm sorry. Just a cost-benefit analysis reduced to 7 words. The work is done. The biological infrastructure is failing. Continued operation yields diminishing returns. Why wait? It's the question of an efficiency expert, a project manager closing out a completed assignment. His death was scheduled between 2 business meetings, executed during a window of operational efficiency. Even the Luger was a calculated choice. He researched firearms, tested angles, determined that a Luger automatic, placed precisely over the left ventricle at a 45-degree angle, would ensure instant cardiac cessation. No prolonged suffering, no uncertainty, no mess beyond the manageable. The wet towel served 3 functions. 1. Dampen the sound. Concrete walls are thick, but why risk alerting the staff prematurely? 2. Prevent clothing ignition. The muzzle flash could theoretically ignite fabric. Eastman wouldn't tolerate a fire, even in death. 3. And this is the detail that Dr. Stewart notices, the one that makes him finally break down. His mother used wet towels when he was sick as a child, when he burned himself in the chemistry experiments. She would place cool, damp cloths on his forehead, his chest, whispering that it would help. The last thing George Eastman did before pulling the trigger was recreate the only gesture of unconditional care he ever received. He built a $2 billion empire, revolutionized human memory, funded universities across continents. But in the end, he wanted his mother's cool hand, and she's been dead for 25 years. Dr. Stewart closes his eyes. When he opens them, He's a physician again. He has procedures to follow. Cause of death: self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chest. Time of death: approximately 1 p.m., March 14, 1932. The body is removed with the same efficiency Eastman would have demanded. The bedroom is cleaned. The blood is washed from the concrete floor. The towel is disposed of. Within 48 hours, the lawyers begin executing the codicil. Kodak's board of directors meets in emergency session. They issue a statement praising Eastman's vision and confirming continuity of operations. The company will continue without him, just as he designed it. The mansion is appraised, cataloged, prepared for transfer to the University of Rochester. The servants are given their bonuses. Some stay on to maintain the building during the transition, others take their severance and leave. Mrs. Ellen Dryden, the head housekeeper who worked for Eastman for 26 years, is found crying in the servant corridor. Not because she loved him, she didn't know him well enough to love him, but because she understood him. She knew what every towel meant, every schedule, every rule. She knew he was building a machine to survive without human warmth. And she knew it worked, because here she is, standing in his fortress, and he's gone, and the machine keeps running. The newspapers publish obituaries. They describe him as a visionary, a philanthropist, an American success story. They print the note, "My work is done. Why wait?" Readers interpret it as wisdom, the calm acceptance of a man who accomplished everything he set out to do. They don't understand what Dr. Stewart understood. It wasn't acceptance. It was project completion. George Eastman didn't embrace death. He scheduled it. And when the scheduled time arrived, he executed the plan with the same precision he applied to everything else. No drama, no hesitation, no waste. Just a man, a gun, and a 7-word closing statement on 77 years of calculated living. The final business transaction. The ultimate liquidation. He spent his life building systems that could function without him. And on March 14, 1932, at 1 p.m., he tested whether the most important system, his own life, could be terminated just as efficiently. It could. The mansion on East Avenue remains. The concrete walls still stand. The organ is still there, though no one plays it anymore. In 1949, 17 years after his death, the University of Rochester officially opens the George Eastman Museum. Every year, thousands of visitors walk through the rooms where he ate alone, where he listened to organ music to drown out the silence, where he built a fortress against chaos and discovered that concrete can't stop grief. They study his photographs, his cameras, his inventions. But there's one thing they don't see. One final irony that completes the forensic analysis of George Eastman's life. The bunker he built to keep the world out has become the world's window in. And 60 miles away, in Rochester's industrial district, another monument is falling. January 19, 2012, Rochester, New York. Kodak files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The company George Eastman built, the empire that once employed over 60,000 people in Rochester alone, collapses into insolvency. Total debt: $6.75 billion. The cause isn't external, it's philosophical. Kodak invented the digital camera in 1975. Stephen Sasson, a Kodak engineer, built the first digital prototype. The company's response: bury it. Why? Because digital photography threatened film sales, and film sales were the foundation of the empire. So Kodak's leadership made a choice: protect the existing system, maintain control over the known market, avoid the chaos of disruption. It's exactly what George Eastman would never have done. The man who destroyed the wet collodion process to build dry plates, who cannibalized his own glass plate business to manufacture roll film, who made his own cameras obsolete by releasing simpler models. Eastman's philosophy was predatory innovation. Destroy your own products before someone else does. But the company he left behind forgot that lesson. They chose control over adaptation, stability over risk, and the market executed them for it. By 2012, Kodak's workforce has shrunk to 17,000. The factories in Kodak Park, the industrial city within a city that Eastman built, are mostly abandoned. The yellow boxes that once appeared in every home from Paris to Tokyo are now museum pieces. The company exits bankruptcy in 2013, but it's a shell, a licensing operation managing old patents, not the innovation engine Eastman created. His empire didn't fall to competition, it fell to the fear of chaos. The same fear that made him build a concrete mansion. The same fear that made him fire employees after his mother died. The same fear that made him place a wet towel on his chest before pulling the trigger. But here's the irony that completes the forensic analysis. The mansion survived. 900 East Avenue still stands. The concrete walls, the 12-inch fireproof barriers, the reinforced infrastructure that Eastman built to resist destruction, it's all still there. The George Eastman Museum welcomes over 50,000 visitors annually. They walk through the conservatory, where palm trees still grow under the glass dome. They stand in the music room, where the Aeolian organ, 950 pipes, still dominates 3 floors. They tour the bedroom where he died, though the museum doesn't emphasize that detail. Too dark for family-friendly tourism. They see the servant corridors, the hidden passages, the infrastructure that made human presence invisible. And they marvel at the scale, the precision, the engineering achievement. But they don't see what the architecture was actually designed to do. It wasn't designed to impress visitors, it was designed to exclude them. Every room, every corridor, every system was built to create perfect solitude, to eliminate unpredictability, to maintain absolute control over every sight, every sound, every human interaction. Eastman built a bunker against the world, and now the world buys tickets to walk through it. 50,000 people a year enter the space he designed for one. School groups eat lunch in the conservatory. Wedding parties pose for photographs on the grand staircase. Tourists browse the gift shop where his study used to be. The fortress, designed to keep chaos out, has become a monument to the futility of that design. Because chaos won. Not through violence, through time. Eastman is gone. His mother is gone. The servants are gone. The company that bore his name is a shadow. But strangers walk his halls. Children run through his corridors. Couples kiss under his organ pipes. The concrete endured, but the meaning dissolved. This is the Ozymandias moment. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Except the works remain. Physically, the mansion is maintained, preserved, protected. But it's been repurposed, recontextualized, transformed into the exact opposite of what it was designed to be. A public space, a democratic institution, a place where anyone with $15 can enter the private world of a man who spent 77 years building walls. George Eastman revolutionized human memory. He made it possible for billions of people to preserve moments that would otherwise dissolve into time. But he couldn't preserve his own meaning. The photographs remain. The cameras are in museums. The inventions are studied. But the man who created them is remembered not for what he built, but for how he died. The wet towel, the 7-word note, the engineering precision of his own execution. That's what people remember. Not the philanthropy, not the innovation, not the empire. The suicide, because that's the moment when control finally failed, when the engineering stopped working, when the biological infrastructure rejected the system. And there's a question the mansion can't answer, a question that hangs in the silence of those 50 rooms. Was it worth it? Building the fortress, maintaining the systems, eliminating the variables, firing himself from life when the machinery started failing. Did the control justify the cost? He died worth billions. He funded institutions that still operate. He changed how humanity sees itself. But he died alone, in a room designed for solitude, with a wet towel on his chest, recreating a gesture of maternal care from a woman who had been dead for 25 years. The forensic conclusion is simple. George Eastman won the war against poverty. He built systems that couldn't fail. He engineered reality itself. But he lost the war against chaos. Because chaos wasn't external. It wasn't fire, or bankruptcy, or social collapse. It was biological, neurological, inevitable. And when it finally came for him, all the concrete in the world couldn't stop it. The mansion stands. The museum thrives. The visitors keep coming. But the man who built it is gone. And the walls he erected, the barriers he constructed, the systems he perfected, they're all still there. Just serving a different master now. Time.